Eye on Gauteng, brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Economic Development.
Welcome back. You're watching Eye on Gauteng. We're talking about Gauteng's broadband strategy. Still with us is MEC Mandla Nkomfe. We also have Willie Olivier and James Ainslie. Gentlemen, just before the break, we were talking about where we are, and I'm going to bring MEC in here. Let's compete with the rest of the world, and I think that's where we are measured. Africa is an charted territory, and there's some countries on the continent that are maybe a little bit further than us. Is there that competition, MEC, to be the best and the fastest in Africa with regards to internet and broadband?
Yes, there is. I mean, the competition is always
and
there.
How are we doing?
We're not doing well now, because countries like Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda are kind of advanced than us. Perhaps also because maybe there are greenfields in that. With us, we just maybe on the fourth or fifth or altogether, and we're not happy with that as government, nationally and in the province. Because we want to see ourselves as a gateway to Africa. And there's a lot of competition around that. Kenya is here, Nigeria, etc. But we think that through broadband and internet penetration, we can be able to sort out these issues. And where government comes in is the effect of lowering the costs, first of doing business, the cost of data, of internet. We just had a study of the internet penetration, the profile of Gauteng, as it were. What we have found is that there is a correlation between the levels of education and the extent of the usage of the internet. And also there's a correlation between the poor and the levels of internet penetration and all that. Now, government in any situation comes in there, and that's why for us, e-learning is going to be very important. Health space must be connected because it's about content to effect the uptake. The economy, particularly like tourism, small and medium enterprises. But in the last instance also the issue of, he's spoken about the last mile, the connection into the house. And that will also have an effect of the boxes that you put in the houses and all that. And it generates quite a lot of employment. You crowd in investment locally and also internationally. So as government, I think that's our angle, to lower the costs and in that sense, I think we could be competitive.
Okay, Willie, in Stockholm, Sweden, there's a model of a city that was a smart city.
Correct.
And it basically meant that, is it the last mile we're talking about, where consumers have this amazing fast internet directly to their homes. Is the Joburg project going to reach to that level?
Well, what we started off doing is creating the layer in the ground for anybody else to come and connect to it. Okay, so we have to go back. Nothing was in the ground. We started this project 3 years ago. We are on plan to complete it by May this year, next year. And what we needed to do is create a building block for that. The next step would be to partner with government initiatives and partner with private entities to take that last mile into the people's homes. So what we're referring to is FTTH, fiber to the home, and that will become a reality. If it's going to become a reality in the next 2 years, I can't tell you that, but it's definitely on the cards for over the next 5 or 10 years. And we need to strive and get the economy to that point before it becomes reality.
Fantastic. James, you deal with learners on a daily basis, at least your company does. Excuse me. I want to talk to you about internet entrepreneurship. The fact that other countries around the world have Silicon Valleys and things like that. These kids that have access to internet every single day at school. In your mind, do you think that we are going to have another internet entrepreneur because of the exposure they've had to this type of service?
Certainly, I think so. The development of a knowledge economy is hype without ready access to information, and by disrupting the market, providing the kind of content that is available to our learners, we're able to play in that space. But I think the MEC pointed out earlier, in partnership with the private sector is very key. and adoption ultimately is dependent on low-cost devices like the set-top box project that the government is running. We've recently met with our strategic hardware providers, Dell and Wise, with a view to driving a low-cost cloud-enabled product into the marketplace. And Dell, who have recently acquired Wise, which are our thin client offering, see this as the most significant strategic acquisition in their history. We're going to be partnering with them, large-scale industry, in terms of providing that low-cost device into the market space, and that will create a springboard for the entrepreneur that you're talking about.
All right, so obviously that sounds really exciting. MEC, I want to bring you in here with regards the role of the various spheres of government. In the insert, we saw the national government making pronouncements. We've covered your ICT summit, the Gauteng one, and we've seen the work that's happening at BWired on a municipal level. And we have these different spheres of government as well as the private sector to make things more complicated. So we know where we need to be. I think anybody listening to the program will understand that we know where we need to be. But in determining the role of the various sphere of government, I think that needs clarification. Whose responsibility is what?
What we have done so far is to look at the province as a whole and basically establish that different municipalities are actually implementing and trying to get around the broadband issues, like the city of Johannesburg, Tshwane, and all that. So we've got a sense of what's happening all over. What you need to do is to synchronize that, because at the end of the day, this issue of the last mile, it's important. And that's where we come in to see where are the gaps, how do we align our work together. You also have to look at the footprint, the existing footprint, whether it's from the banking sector, whether it's from other organizations, maybe even your Vodacoms, your MTNs, those types of organizations. Is there a footprint out there? And state-owned enterprises themselves, they have to come into the mix. And on the basis of that, decide on what option you want to, for instance, in Joburg, they have gone into the issue of the fiber itself. There are options of that is wiring the whole place. And in other areas, it's actually happening. I've just been looking at Stellenbosch, the work that they've been doing there with Wi-Fi and all that. But at the end of the day, you still need a backbone, a core infrastructure, as it were. There is a structure that is there, which is convened by the Premier of Gauteng. I was just sharing that structure just a few hours earlier, where we meet with the mayors of all the mayors in Gauteng. We deal with a whole range of projects. One of them is this issue of broadband. Where are you? What can we do, etc. And so at the end of the day, we're going to be, and then look at, for instance, Gauteng Online. They're using what is satellite network. How do they come on board? That alignment is going to be important. Private sector is going to be important at two levels, at the infrastructure level, but most importantly also at just partnerships around financing the whole issue. In Joburg, I think they've led the way. They've got some form of private-public partnership in the city of Joburg. And I think in other areas it's the same.
Willie, just very quickly before we go to before we end the show, how will the system touch the lives of Joe public? Currently, the system has been put in place. City of Joburg services will be faster, quicker. If you're going to need to interact with the municipality, you'll be able to do so at a much quicker pace and so on. And their own internal efficiencies will be much greater. But Joe public, guy on the street, how will he be affected?
Well, firstly, to create a smart city, it's about all the people. It's not just about government. So we start off all from the areas from Orange Farm, as far as Orange Farm, into Soweto. We also connect some of the urban areas like Diepsloot and all of these other areas, and try and give these people access to basic needs. If you have access to basic needs, everything else falls in line. Eventually off that, you get e-learning, You get e-health, where we can have remote doctors try and assist these people in remote areas where you can't get to within a day's traffic.
In real time also.
And in real time, which makes the difference.
You're talking about diagnosis and everything.
Diagnosis and all of this.
Prescriptions of medicines and...
Which is wonderful. And then lastly, smart grid solutions. And I mean, and to accomplish all of that, it speaks for itself. That's a smart city. Okay. And I think that will improve everybody's lives.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. James, just before we go, the kind of future that we're looking at in terms of ICT, broadband, internet, the future, what do you see in the future? And you know, there's a bit of a curveball, I know, but...
I think that we're standing at a point in the history of technology that is only a little bit less significant than the Industrial Revolution. There's about to be a sea change in the way citizens take up technology. Okay. We already see it in terms of the way content is being driven into our lives. And ultimately, through the provision of focused value propositions out of the cloud to the e-citizen as a whole, we'll leverage efficiency in government, we'll leverage the development of a knowledge economy, and that'll have spin-off effects in terms of job creation and ultimately enabling our citizens to become leaders in this field.